first question as we round the bases is this: Barr today versus 10 years ago, 10-year anniversary. You've made it here 10 years. What do you think about the growth and where you're at compared to where you started?
I go back to, I recall we had, this was 3 years in, there were 7 of us. We're all sitting around the room, and we were dreaming about where we're going to be as a company, and talked about revenue goals and culture and things like that. And we didn't hit our annual goals, but we always hit our 3-year goals, right? And we've hit our 10-year goal, and we've like tripled it. And it goes back to, I think we overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what we can do in 10. And so I'm really proud of that. And I think where I feel like we are growing is when I start to get butterflies of kind of that next adventure. And if I'm not getting those butterflies, that means I'm staying status quo. And that's something that I work with my team on. I talk to my kids about as well. Like this, my oldest son, sometimes he's like a little adverse to trying new things. And if you're not getting those butterflies, that means you're not taking enough risk and committing to something and taking that courage so you can build those capabilities and confidence moving forward. So I don't think I really envisioned where we were actually going to be 10 years ago. But I think it's going back to each day, are you trying new things, and are you improving yourself?
Our second question, I think this one's more lighthearted. Maybe it's bad memories. I'm not really sure. Ashley does great research for me, but I was reading this story about you, and it reminded me of my early years in television. I was going out to do a feature story. You'll see where I'm going in a minute here. I was going out to do a feature story, which is what I did in my early days. The camera, the microphone, the reporting, and I did all these like community stories. They were really heartwarming, unique. People would send in a letter to the television station. I'm in northern Wisconsin, and I'd go out and do the story about the dog that took the bag and brought it from one house down the street to the other, and something, like this stuff could have been on Letterman sometimes, I think. I mean, it was just quirky, fun community things. So I go out to this older couple's house, and I don't remember what the story was. I think it was either something with a Christmas display or maybe a train set or something. There, this no better way to describe them as this darling elderly couple. And I shoot the interview with them on their couch in this old house, and shoot all the video. And I take the lights down. I put the light down on the carpet and this and that. And then I go to pick it all up as it cools off. And I burned a hole through the whole carpet. I've seared a hole in the whole carpet. And I'm 22 years old. I have no money. And I'm like, I'm going to have to pay for their whole carpet. And I'm freaking out. And I got to tell them now that this is there. And thank goodness for me, they said, oh, don't worry about it. It's old. And I mean, it was one of the scariest and comical moments, I guess, of my career. But I was reading the story that you started a painting company in college with no experience, and that you power washed the wood right off of not just anybody's gazebo, but a judge's gazebo. Is the story correct? Take us through that.
Oh my gosh, you are good at your research.
No, that's my amazing assistant, Ashley. She finds stuff.
Yeah, maybe this is a case where I probably took some of that risk taking a little bit too far, right? And so I had, that's a true story. I was in college.
You had no idea where I was going, but I just, when I saw that, I'm like, I know that feeling, but I didn't go to court on it.
Yeah, that's a true story. I had I painted the house of this gentleman. He was fantastic, but his father-in-law was the judge.
Okay.
And so he referred me over to his father-in-law, but father-in-law didn't see our work we were really good at painting houses, but not very good at doing decks. Yeah. And so he had this just enormous 2-story deck, and I was looking at my team and I was like, let's do this, guys. We can do this. Let's figure this out. And it went terrible. We never did a deck before, and he threatened to sue me, and he did sue me. I was a junior in college. I mean, what is he going to get from me? Nothing.
Right.
Nothing. My ladders. But it was a great lesson learned of, there are boundaries when it comes to risk. I learned a lot just with that exercise. Sometimes you do have to know your limits, and that was a good lesson learned. And I learned a little bit about the legal system as well.
Yeah. I always like to throw some kind of curveball or something out there in these 4 final questions, because they're fun. We all can relate to being that age and doing something that, not that you would want to be in that position now as well, but or hopefully a little bit wiser. And I could come up with a whole blooper reel on and off the air for all of the things that I learned the hard way.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I did fix it though. I spent weeks fixing it. I said, "Don't sue me. I'm going to fix it. I promise."
I don't know who my people were, but they let me off the hook. But there was a nice rectangular burned out chunk of carpet right there in their living room as you walked into the house, thanks to some young 22-year-old punk that had no idea what he was doing. But it was a good story. I think we got a good feature out of it. Anyway, the third question, as I round the bases, the last two on cybersecurity, but what should I mean, I think the big companies know that they need your services. You're working with the Lochtons of the world, but what should the small business owner or someone that maybe isn't paying as much attention to this as they should, what should keep somebody up at night? What keeps you up at night?
We get paid to stay up at night and be paranoid. So I think as a small business owner, start small. We're talking about small ball. You got to start small and you got to break this out into chunks. But we filter a lot of our clients to really three questions really. But the first one is, do you have somebody on your leadership team, executive team that is going to own cybersecurity? It can be a small bullet. It can be the CFO at the very beginning. Just having a bullet says, "Hi, I'm accountable for this." And the very first thing that you can start with is just putting some policies together, and that's it. It can be a lot more complicated over time. I'm actually writing a book on this currently. There is so many lemons out there when it comes to cybersecurity. It's not like it's back like in the 70s. You can go out and buy a car without really having the Carfax. It's kind of like what cybersecurity tooling is today. It's hard to educate the market, and so nobody really knows what they're buying or not buying. And a lot of times people want that easy button. Well, I just want to outsource everything, but you can delegate everything but responsibility. And so somebody on that leadership team has to have that accountability. So I think that's first and foremost. And then you got to have a cybersecurity roadmap or want one. Even if you're a small one-person company, you got to have some aspect of managing risk.
It's good stuff for everyone, and I want to let everybody know too, and it'll be in our show notes that there are a lot of good tips and pointers about all of this. Not to mention just the company history and some of the values for Barr Advisory. It's barradvisory.com, 2 R's in Barr. That leads me to my final question, the walk-off. On the website, there's a blog about 4 cybersecurity trends to watch in 2024. We're still here early in 2024 as we're recording and releasing this. And before I clicked on that blog, I thought AI's got to be somewhere in there, right? And of course, it is. I find myself talking about artificial intelligence a lot on this podcast because I think that everybody's involved in it, or if they're not, they should be, but not everybody quite understands how to use it. And if we're opening up this Pandora's box, which it certainly feels like we are and we have, and it's going to keep going and going and going, that there's a lot of risk out there as well. How do you balance the excitement, the innovation of artificial intelligence with cybersecurity?
Oh, we could have a whole week of podcasts just on AI.
Sorry to leave that one for the last question.
I think the best way to there's a lot of scary things about AI. And that's kind of the fear side. There's kind of two camps here. One is like just extremely fearful of it and doesn't want to touch it. And then there's others like these very early adopters. But I think everybody wants to know something about it. And you hear this, these things about artificial general intelligence, where at some point these machines, you won't be able to tell the difference between a human and how you're interacting with a human versus a machine. So that can be really scary to some people. But I think technology, it's a relationship game. I mean, going back, you come right back to a relationship. You can either have a relationship with it or you don't, but you always have to work on relationships. Same thing with technology, and you've got to own it. I mean, there's an analogy that I have is my mom is very passionate about dogs, and bear with me for a second. This will tie into AI, but she's extremely passionate. She fosters and rescues dogs. She rehabilitates them to be adopted, and she takes the time to make sure that there's a good match. And as part of her efforts, she even, I think, at one point traveled all the way to Florida to make sure that she found this dog a good home. And the reason why that's important and relevant to AI is because let's use pit bulls. Wherever you sit on the fence of how pit bulls are, there's a lot of legislation that bans pit bull breeds. And I mean, let's face it, a pit bull bite is a lot stronger than a menstrual schnauzer. And her passion for animals spilled over into getting the right legislation for animals. But regardless of what you think about technology, regardless of what you think about dogs, it comes down to ownership. And she said it's how important good owners of dogs are. That's what makes or breaks kind of the dog. And it's the same thing with concept with AI. Let's not let AI go rogue with it. You have to make sure you own AI and the relationship that we have with technology versus letting it own us. And some people call that human in the loop, on the loop, whatever you want to say with AI. But technology is always going to be a multiplier. It's not going to take us over. That's my optimistic line of thinking, but that's just going to be part of a human experiment to make sure that we take ownership of it versus letting it own us.
Well, there's a lot to process there, and that's the super condensed version. But I think that it should be on everybody's mind in the simplest form. And I think I would just add that if you're totally ignoring it, you're going to get left behind. Mm-hmm. Like if you're done, you're retired, and you're shutting it down, then I don't know. Maybe it's a good thing to know a little bit to connect with your grandkids. I don't know, but for the most part, it's going to become an everyday part of our lives. Already is in many ways, in whatever form it is, and even if it's on the simplest of forms, it should be a tool in your toolbox. I mean, it's available to you, and so that's what I keep thinking is that I don't want to be obsessed with it. I don't want it to own my life, but I also don't want to wake up one day and say, "Boy, look at everybody else, and I've been left behind." That's just innovation and being relevant. So anyway, so much insight. I knew that we could go in a lot of different directions. I knew that when you and I were on that panel. Congratulations on 10 years at Barr Advisory, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's April 4th, so I'm looking forward to getting together with all of your people. Nice to schedule that, but you did not schedule it around me when the Royals are at home, so that works out really well too. But more significantly, thanks for spending time on Rounding the Bases. BarrAdvisory.com. Brad, thank you so much.
Thank you, Joel. Thanks for having me.